What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another video in make.com, but for people who want to make real money. And today I'm going to be talking about a 7-figure hiring system that I use for my own business and that I built out for a variety of 7- and 8-figure businesses. You're going to learn exactly how to build that out in make.com. It's an extremely simple flow, but it does require a few platforms. So we're going to talk about the best platforms to use for it. And then I'm just going to walk you through step by step, both my methodology, my mindset, and some of the little trip-ups that people usually, unfortunately, suffer as they're attempting to build these out. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned, and let's get into the video. Okay, first things first, here is the hiring system that I'm going to build out. I've shown this on previous videos. It's extremely straightforward. Essentially, you have a pipeline and a project management system. The pipeline that we're using today is called ClickUp, and I've alluded to it in multiple previous videos, but it's one of my favorite pipelines, my favorite project management platforms, simply because it's so customizable. And if you know what you're doing, you can do a lot with it. And what we have here is we essentially have an appropriately named hiring pipeline where people will come in through our Typeform that I've set up and posted on a bunch of job websites. They'll then put in various fields like their portfolio, the rate that they want, the number of hours they can work, and a few comments. And then we have a virtual assistant that will go through this, usually about once a week or so, and then sort out any applicants that they consider are high quality enough to be reviewed by our writing manager. And so this is how we do it at our content agency. Obviously, if you're doing a different sort of business model, like I'm not going to be rebuilding the content agency side of things for this video. I'm going to be pretending I'm hiring for a sales role. But depending on your business model, depending on the specific role that you're hiring, your fields might look a little bit different. But this is just a very effective way that I've found to structure this. And so after they're reviewed, you see there's a little rating tab on the right-hand side here. The manager will then take a look at this, and then if the manager likes what they see, what they'll do is they'll request a trial, and we'll move them to this stage. Now, this is all managed automatically using automation, so we'll send out an email that's templated, basically saying, hey, thanks so much for sending us your application. We love the stuff that we've seen you do. All that's left now is for you to write a brief trial article for us. We'll make sure that they get paid for this work because I find in my experience, it's almost never worth the few dollars that you save getting people to do free work when you compare it to its effect on both your reputation and the quality that you get. After they finish the trial, they go to review trial, and this is a stage where somebody on the team can look over and make sure that this trial article is representative of the quality of work that we'd like to see out of them. And then finally, we have like an onboarding stage and then a hired stage. Not going to touch too much on these just because of how customized this typically is, but yeah, this is how we hire for our 7-figure agency and how we run through hundreds of applicants usually per week when the system is up and running. We haven't hired in a little while, which is why we have so many of these, and we haven't really needed to do anything with the system in a bit, but yeah, that's more or less what we're going to be building out. So I'm going to show you how to do it in ClickUp. I'll show you how to build out the form in Typeform. I'll show you how to set up the make flow so that we can dump new leads into new applicant, and then I'll also run through a few automations to like automatically move them to the successful stage, assuming that their rating is above a 4, and we'll template out a quick little email to send them, and so on and so forth. This video will differ from previous ones insofar that we're not just building out one flow. We're building out many because I like to torture myself and make these videos long. So we're probably going to build out 2 or 3 make scenarios, maybe 4, depending on whether or not we have enough time. But anywho, I love building these sorts of systems out because they can have such an outsized impact on the businesses that I do this for. And yeah, it's just, it's really fun. So first things first, what we have to do is obviously log into all of our make accounts. We have to jump into Typeform because we're going to start logically with the beginning, which is the form. And then we'll work our way through ClickUp and then connect it all with Make. So I'm logged into Typeform here. I have a pretty big agency account, so I have no limits or restrictions with the number of form submissions I can receive. I mean, if you guys are wanting to do more than 100 submissions a month, I think you guys are going to have to pay like $50 a month or something like that, $59 a month. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click Add Workspace, and then I'm going to write test build. And that way I'm just going to keep everything organized on my side. Make has been running into this issue recently where sometimes the access is denied on the US server. So I am on the US server for my account. Sometimes I have to log in twice. Sort of annoying, but it's no big deal. You can also just keep on trying and eventually you'll get in. Okay, great. And then, yeah, I'm also going to build out a new space here on ClickUp just to house this. I'll call this test build. We'll go next. No description. Let's make this dark like my soul. We'll have it be shared with the 1-second copy workspace, and then no task statuses, no nothing. I'll just keep going. I don't need any click apps here, but whatever, I'll just keep them, and then we'll do list space. Cool, that looks good. I'm going to click create, and then it's going to go through and then make this. And then this is the list that we're going to use as our hiring pipeline. So let me just rename this, call this hiring pipeline example, just to disambiguate between the other one. And then great, yeah, we should have everything that we need now. Now, I always like to start at the top of any flow, at the very beginning. Usually I'll have some kind of ideas as I'm developing a type form or something like that. And so if I were to try and start at the end or at the middle, I basically have to go back and then update my type form to have the fields that I want to have in that middle part. So I'd just always encourage you guys, like if you're starting with form as a trigger, just fill out the form first, make sure that that's everything that you want. So in Typeform, the way that you do that is you click Create New Form, and then I'm going to create mine as like a basic form. So I'm going to have mine be, I'm not going to use AI to fill it in or anything like that. And we're going to be a little bit laggy just because I'm on shitty hotel internet today. But on that note, Toronto has been lovely. What a beautiful city. If you guys haven't been, I would highly recommend it. Okay, we're going to call this type form, let's do hiring form. For the purposes of this example, let's pretend we're hiring for a salesperson. So we'll just say sales hiring form. And then I'm going to click continue. Okay, not a big fan of like the default images and stuff like that, so I'm just going to remove them. That looks good. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask a couple of very simple questions, and I'm going to leave it at 2 or 3 because I don't want the type form part to be a really big chunk of this video. And then if you guys wanted to, add specific questions that are more relevant to your job post or something like that, then feel free. You can have like a resume field, you could have like CVs, you could have people write you letters, all that stuff. But in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a contact info. And then I'll say, first, let's get your contact information. Let's say details. We'll use this to notify you of an interview. First name we want, last name we want, phone number we want, email we want, company, we don't really need this. Odds are if they're applying for a position, they probably don't own a company or anything like that. I will make all these fields required because they're going to be necessary for the rest of the flow. Well, not all of them, but I just want people to get in the habit of, hey, are you applying for a job with us? Well, then if so, you do need to provide your first, last name, phone number, all that stuff. What I usually like to do for sales, and some people are going to disagree with me on this, but I like to have people record a quick 1-minute video just explaining their job history like over the video, as opposed to in a resume or a CV. If you think about it, the vast majority of sales positions, most of the work that a salesperson is going to be doing is probably going to be either over video, over a call, or maybe in person. And so just seeing how they operate, in real life, like while conversing, is really important. So I'll say attach a 1-minute Loom video explaining who you are, your job history, and why you want to work here. Let's just do that. Loom is a 1-click video share platform. You can sign up here. If you can't install Loom for whatever reason, you can also add a Google Drive link to a video recorded by other means. Guidelines, keep the video between 1 and 2 minutes. And make sure to listen to it before. Make sure it's shared. And make sure to listen to it before you submit. Cool. So I really like doing that for sales positions. So obviously this can't be a multiple choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a website or a link field. There you go. Website link here. I'm going to make this question required as well. And then I'm also going to just look up Loom so that if anybody is unfamiliar with this, it's just a very quick and easy way. Oops, let's do this. Just that it's a quick and easy way to sort of have like transparency that this is a tool that we're going to be using. And if you don't know anything about it, click here to find out. Oh, sorry. You can sign up. It's free and you can sign up here. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that looks good. What other questions do we want? Let's have one final question, which will just be yes or no. And I'm going to pretend that I'm hiring for a high-ticket sales position. And let's just front load this here first. Have you ever sold a product worth more than $5,000? Let's do this. And we're going to frame this as like a high-ticket sort of sales pitch. So I'm going to make this required as well. And the idea is, we want people that have experience selling high-ticket items. Usually high-ticket items force you to sell in a slightly different way than low-ticket items. At the end of this, we'll have a little thank you screen. We'll say thanks for submitting your application. I always like to provide a time because I like to be respectful of other people. So we'll review this and get back to you within 48 hours. If you're not accepted, you'll receive an email notification. And we'll say publish. Okay, really simple form, problem solved. So just gonna pop this puppy open, make sure that it has everything that I want, good. I don't like the powered by Typeform in the bottom right-hand corner. I forget how to remove that though, which is sort of annoying. It's probably in settings. Typeform branding, there we go. Yeah, I can turn that off. Autosave progress, that's good. Letters on answers, that's good. Yeah, sure, whatever. Now, there are a couple different ways that you can do this logically. Like if somebody puts no, and if that's a deal breaker for you, you could just not forward the responses directly from Typeform. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep everybody's information in my Typeform. In my head, it's like, well, if you've already filled out the form and you've already expressed interest, we might as well have your information, right? Not because I'm going to resell their data on freaking, I don't know, to like Chinese spyware or anything like that, but just because, if I ever change my mind in the future, or if I'm ever looking for low-ticket salespeople, well, now at least I have a list of people that I can probably start with before having to do this whole thing over again. But anyway, now that we have the Typeform up, I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a make module and just test this. So I'm going to say new Typeform entry, new sales hiring form Typeform entry. And what do we want this to do? We want to add this to ClickUp. So first things first is I'm going to click on this button. I'll type Typeform. And then what I want to do is I want to watch responses, and then I want it to be instant and acid. Now, Make has like a little ambiguation between acid and instant acid. I don't remember, to be completely honest, and I've never really thought about this or used it. Generally speaking, if there are two equivalent modules and one says instant, just use the instant one. That basically means just like a webhook trigger going on underneath the hood, and it'll run automatically. If we were to just choose the acid one, then instead of it being this webhook kind of lightning dash thing over here, it would be a timer, and it was basically just pull every 10 or 15 minutes. Obviously, it's not very operationally efficient. We want to minimize op usage however possible, without it being like the center of our lives, of course. But the fact that it runs instantly is also important because we want to make sure that we just get their information whenever they put it in. I'm going to call this sales hiring form submission. And then in the form ID, you see I can just already select sales hiring form. Typeform's nice that way in that it just sorts by newly created. And then I'll press enter. Okay. Now, if you watch my previous videos, you'll know that I have a special two-step sort of Typeform design pattern. It's pretty simple. Basically, we want to get the response in one step, and then we want to wait a second or two, and then retrieve all of our responses in like ascending order of submission or descending order of submission, ascending order of submission, so that we could like then map the answers and separate the trigger from the usage of that information. And I'll talk about that in a sec. After I sip my extremely way too hot coffee, that's what I get for hotel coffee makers. Let's go to sleep here. We'll just do like a 2-second delay for the purposes of this demonstration, and then I want to list all of the responses. What I'm going to do is select the sales hiring form, and then I only want to select one, and then I'm just going to auto-align. Okay, so the reason I do this is because I want to be able to test this form whenever the hell I want. I don't want to have to run a new Typeform submission every time that I want to test. I want to be able to just get the last submission and then just like click a button and just have that be used, assuming that the last time I filled it out was with the information that I wanted. This saves a boatload of time during maintenance and testing, and it's essentially like I refer to it as separating from the usage of the variable. I'm sure there's a fancier and more programming sounding way that I could have pitched that, but that's just what I do. So this one is watching the responses, as you see down here, and then this one is listing the responses. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to run this, and then I'm going to fill out the form for the first and hopefully the last time with my information. So that's my name. This is apparently my phone number, and then this is my email address. I've sold a product worth more than $5,000. And then let's just pretend that I have a Loom video. Sure, that's my video. Okay, great. I'm going to click submit. It's thanking me for submitting my application. We'll review this, get back to you in 48 hours. Let me just make sure that all that's spelled right. Yes, it is. Okay, and then if you see back here, now we have those little cloud dot things next to the modules. That means that we retrieved it. This is what a Typeform, I just realized I was really zoomed out. Hopefully you guys can still see that. This is what a Typeform submission looks like. We have a bunch of different fields here. There's definition, which we use, answers. There are ending, that just reference a specific ending screen. There's an event, so they have like IDs for the events themselves. And then there are mappable answers. And you're going to use mappable answers 99% of the time. You see here that that's my first name, my last name, the phone number I put in, the email address, the true or false for the product over 5,000, and then the Loom video link. Now you then see that we waited for a couple seconds, and then we went back and we actually just queried Typeform again to retrieve the mappable answers here. And the reason why is we're going to be using this module's mappable answers, not this module's mappable answers, so that at any time, if I want to get that form that I just submitted, I just drag this over here and then click run once, and then it pulls it. And so now we can just test nonstop, extremely quickly, and finish out the rest of our flow basically in like 2 seconds. So, okay, great. So now that we have the Typeform responses, let's just go through here and look at the fields. We're obviously going to need the first name, going to need the last name, going to need the phone number, going to need an email. We're going to have a true or false here, and then we're going to have a Loom video link. That sounds pretty simple to build out in ClickUp, so why don't we do that? What I always like to do is just add a record. What I usually do is I make the record the name of like the first name and the last name, and then I'll actually store the first name and the last name separately, just because I don't like having to worry about like random bullshit associated with, if you guys have seen previous videos, I have to like split text and then get it. It's better just have like a single source of truth. So I'm going to hide the columns that I don't want. I don't need a due date. I will keep an assignee because the assignee is going to be the person that's like responsible for dealing with this record, and we're just going to auto assign them to be me. But you can imagine how, you know, if you have like a virtual assistant or somebody that you want to manage these sorts of hires, then you can stick them over there. And then I'm going to get to work adding fields. So the first field I'm going to add is going to be called stage. And I'm going to add a few stages. One, I'll do intake. Another one I'll add is called reviewed. A third one that I'll add is, let's pretend I'm doing a 2-stage interview. So we'll do interview 1, and we'll do interview 2. Yeah, that looks good. And then obviously we'll have like hired or something, just to give us a way to look at all the people that we've hired or have not hired as a result of this. On that note, we should probably have another field that's like not or past or something. I'm just adding random colors here because I don't like my drop downs not to be pretty. Let's just call this no fit. Make this ugly and gray. Awesome. So I've added it now, and I'm going to move the stage over here to the left just because I think that's the most important field realistically. And then I want a few other pieces of information, right? So let's go back to our scenario and let's see what they are. So first name, last name, phone number, email. Those are simple. So I'll have a text field. It'll be a short text, not long text, and then I'll call it first name. I'll add another field. This may be interfering with some other fields I have elsewhere. So let me see if I could hide this. Maybe there's contact. There's a people field, but that selects people in our workspace. Let's just call this first. You guys should call this first name, but I just have a bunch of what are called like space fields or board fields or just ClickUp wide fields called first name that I've used in previous automations, so I can't use the term first name. So I'm just going to go first, and then we'll call it that. And then I'll have another one, and I'll call it last. Then we'll do another one called email, and we'll just call this candidate email. Probably won't conflict. Yeah, there you go, it doesn't. We'll go phone number. I'll go candidate phone. I'll say, We can do a drop down with two options, yes or no, single select, and I'm going to call this high ticket experience with a question mark. I'll just say yes or no. And then I'm going to have a final field here, which is a website field, and I'll say Loom video. Keep in mind this isn't, it's not always going to be a Loom video, as we've talked about before, but the vast majority of people will probably use Loom because, you know, if you're putting that as like a platform that you guys use in the company, odds are. This is a pretty long field, so I just want to be able to show everything here. Let's just do sold high ticket. That way we can shorten it, and that way we can have everything just in one view, which I find important, right? We have the first name, last name here, we have the stage, we have an assignee, then we have first name, last name again, candidate email, phone number, sold high ticket, Loom video. What else might we need? Should probably have like a date updated or something. That's usually good to have. So I'll write date, and then click a bunch of different options that you can pick from. There's date created, date updated, yada yada. Let's do created actually instead of updated. And then this is pretty important, so let's put it right next to the stage. Okay, that looks good. It's a shame we can't fit all of this in one screen perfectly, but we can get pretty close, which I like. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group this by the stage field that I just created. So I'll click group, and then I'll go down to stage. And what this is going to do is just going to replace that to do with the stage that they're in, so intake or reviewed or whatever. And the reason why is because if I had multiple fields or multiple entries, I can then just very visually see the hierarchy of, okay, this person's in intake, this person's in reviewed, that sort of thing, which is pretty simple. So yeah, okay, great. So everything seems to work okay. What I'm going to do is delete everything now, and I'm going to try and set up the integration to automatically create these using the input that I'm getting from this Typeform. So I'm going to click this add button and then go to ClickUp. There should be a module here called create a task or get a task. There you go, create a task. And then going to go and select the appropriate board and space. Super annoying in ClickUp, unfortunately. Folder, if you don't have a folder to house your list in ClickUp. So as you see in some spaces here, I have like a top level folder like this one called CRM. But in this one, I just have like a list called hiring pipeline example. If you don't have that, then it'll just call it a folderless list. That was pretty confusing when I first started. I was like, what the hell does that mean? Okay, great. And now we can select the information that we want to specifically put in. So if you want to make this a subtask, for instance, so if you wanted to make this like nested within another task, you'd choose a parent task ID. We don't want to do that. We just want to have the first name, last name, all that stuff. And see how these two modules aren't connected. And so this is actually the beginning of my flow. I do that intentionally just so that I can only access information from this module, just so that I never get confused or anything. Now, unfortunately, it's sort of annoying and hard to see, but the contact information question in Typeform doesn't actually have like the question written up here. It just has like a long, unique identifier. And so you sort of have to like look and squint and really pay attention here to what the previous answer was. In my case, I know my first name is Nick, so that was the question. Last name, Sarayev, so on and so forth. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go Nick, space, Sarayev. That's good, that's what I want. The content field is like the body of a record. So if I create a new one here and then I click on it, you'll see that there's this whole description field in here where you can write whatever the hell you want. That's the content field. We're not going to use the content field at all, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to make myself the assignee. No tags, no status, no priority, no due date. What we're going to want to do now is fill out these custom fields. So custom field last here, candidate phone. I think the formatting is going to be the same, but if not, this will be a good opportunity for me to show you how to parse phone numbers. But it looks like there is a country code sort of mandatory by Typeform, so probably not going to need to worry about that. The stage that I'm going to stick them in is called intake. First name is going to be Nick, sold high ticket. This is interesting, and this is something that you can get in the habit of learning, of doing if you use ClickUp. Okay, so basically in ClickUp, you can either have, in this dropdown that we've created, you can either have a yes or you can have a no, right? Now the issue is there's no way for us to map this. You see that when we select yes, then we try and map, we have this long, super crazy, unique identifier, because every time you create a new dropdown item in ClickUp, it will like, in the back end, their system, their programmers have set it up in such a way where like every one of these stages or dropdown items is assigned this crazy long ID. And so at first glance, it seems sort of annoying. It's like, well, how the hell can you do it? Well, it's actually pretty easy. If you go to yes and then you click map, you see that string. If you go to no and you click map, you see another string. And so what we can do is we can actually use switch modules in Make to get the input, and then depending on the input, have one of these be the output. So what do I mean by this? I'm just really lazy, so I'm going to store the no ID up here, and then this will be my yes ID. In Make, I'm going to write switch. The way that the switch module works, if this is the first time that you're looking at it, is essentially we will evaluate the first value, called the expression, against a list of values, returning the result corresponding to the matching value. What that means, basically, is if you look closely, this B is the one value called the expression. So this is the real value that's coming in from whatever your data source is. This is the thing that we're pulling. And so in my case, that would be the true or the false. And we add this semicolon here. And then if you guys look closely, the next, after the semicolon, the next option is your value one and then your result one. And what you're basically saying is if the value is equal to the expression, then I want you to output the result. So in this case, if A was equal to B, the output of the switch module would be 1. Now, if you look at the next option, it says A semicolon 1, and then it says semicolon B semicolon 2. What that means is this is your second value with the second result. And now this is saying if B, if the value 2 is equal to B, which is the expression, then I want you to output 2. And if you look down underneath the switch statement in the example there's a little equal sign and it says 2. The reason why it's outputting 2 is because the input is B, and then the value that it's selecting is B, and then the result is 2. And so it just matches those two, and then it outputs whatever like the next result is right next to the value. So if that sounds sort of weird, don't worry. It took me probably like 5 minutes of just staring at it and kind of squinting and doing what the fuck is going on. But it is eventually one of the most useful modules that you will learn in Make, specifically because it gets you away from having to use routers. And routers are really annoying because routers aren't very maintainable. You can imagine how we could just use a router here and we could say, well, if the answer to this is yes, then I want you to go down one route and then put yes. If the answer to this is no, then I want you to go down this other route and then press no. But now all of a sudden we have 2 modules, and that's 2 things that we need to keep track of next time we maintain it. And I mean, some of these systems are going to work so long for you guys that you're not going to touch this for like 2 years, but then you're going to have to make a change, and then you're going to have to go back and just reread and relearn everything that you built 2 years ago. Switch statements are just a much easier and simpler way to do that because you don't have all those routes. You only ever have to change things once. So what does this look like in practice for us? We have switch. Our expression 1, or our first expression coming in is going to be either a true or a false, because that's how Typeform is going to format this. And then what we want to happen is basically we're saying if the input is true, then we want to output this long string, which will help us select the drop-down item. If the input is false, then we want to grab this no field, paste that, and then output that. Okay? So I know this can seem sort of annoying, but in order to test this, actually, I'm just going to go through and then create a new module. Let me just put the rest of these fields in. So I know that sounds sort of annoying, but let's just do set multiple variables. And let me just really quickly show you what this means. We're just going to paste all this information in, and then I'm going to run this. Have you ever sold a product worth more than $5,000? This should be a true or false. Yes. Okay, great. So have you ever sold a product worth more than $5,000? You see the output is this long string when I said true. Now let's run this again, and then let's say no. Now you see this long string, which was corresponding to the no drop-down item in ClickUp. And so what's going to happen is this module will output that, and then ClickUp will see that, and then it'll use that to say, oh, they want like the no drop-down item, and then that's how we're going to select the no. Hope that makes sense. Just make sure to click map on here, and then you'll have that field open and accessible to you. Okay, great. Now that we're done with all this, why don't we actually go ahead and test this module? What are we expecting to do? Well, I filled out a form with Nick Sarayev, my first name, last name, my information, all that stuff. And what I want to happen is I want there to be a new record in here at the end of this called Nick Sarayev. That's grouped by stage, and that has all that stuff correctly filled in. So I'm going to click run once. It's going to grab the record, and then you can see it's already done doing what it needs to do in ClickUp. And you'll see that it added all that information successfully. The cool part about this is, again, anytime I want to retest this, all I do is I run this again. So I'm going to do this, and it's going to put the same record in. So now I have 2 Nix arrives. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? And so anytime I want to like screw with any of the functionality or whatever, this is how I do it. One thing that I've realized that I put in my actual system, but I didn't put in this system, is I didn't put in a rating system. I like to have like some type of star rating field thing. You don't need this, of course, if you aren't hiring too many people. But in my case, I was hiring like, 100 people a day, or going through like 50 to 100 people a day at one point. So it was important for me just to be able to rate people on a scale from 4 to 5 or whatever. So if you wanted to do that, you would put in this rating field, and then you could define the number of stars that you want to rate people by. You can even define the emojis that you want. Maybe I want it to be like a thumbs up field. And then you can just have that as like part of your flow. I'm not going to do that for simplicity because I don't want to make this video too long. But suffice to say, that's that. Let's pretend we had 1 Nix arrive here in reviewed, and then now I can just reuse this module just to create a bunch more Nix arrives. So I'm just going to create 2 more. I'm going to add this Nix arrive to interview 1, and then I'll add this Nix arrive to interview 2. Okay, great. And now I think you can start to see how a pipeline is forming here. From a bird's eye view, we have 1 person in intake, 1 person in reviewed, 1 person in interview 1, 1 person in interview 2. It gets a lot simpler sort of as you're navigating through the process. What you can also do is add some type of standard operating procedure where if a person is, I don't know, if, in order for a person to move from review to interview 1, maybe the manager has to jump in here and then leave a comment saying, I really liked Nick's application, his videos were awesome, and he has a ton of experience selling high-ticket stuff. Maybe that just becomes part of your standard operating procedure for like accountability purposes within the company. If like the CEO or something ever wants to look into hiring, well, now they have like a backlog of comments and rationale as to why a manager did or did not hire somebody. This is pretty nice. But where do we go from here? Well, ideally what we want to do is we want to automate this. We want this to be like a really simple, straightforward, automated process. And the way that you do that is use ClickUp as like the single source of truth. This is the only place that anybody ever needs to log on. And then what you do is you use webhooks to create actions from triggers, like when somebody makes it to interview stage 1 or interview stage 2. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have 2 stages. Or 2 automations. I'll have 1 for interview stage 1 and then another 1 for interview stage 2 that send an email out to the candidate email listed here, essentially just saying, hey, congratulations, you made it to interview stage 1. We'd love to book a call with you. Here's a link to a calendar. Please book sometime in the next week. And then assuming that it's a fit, we can move forward to interview stage 2 and then finally, give you guys the job. So that's what that process is going to look like. Obviously, we built out these flows multiple times at this point, so that's not going to be super difficult or anything. For now, I'm just going to move this back and then I'm going to save the flow. And then I'll turn this on. Again, now this is basically watching responses as they come in, and then we're using this as the data source. So that's number 1. Number 2, we're going to call ClickUp stage equals, let's do interviewing 1, send email inviting candidate to interview. And you can imagine how you can build out this flow for like a recruitment company pretty easily. And recruitment companies manage this sort of thing all the time. Now, if you guys remember from a previous video, I love using webhooks for this. I don't actually like using built-in ClickUp modules or anything like that. I basically just love using webhooks because it just gives me so much more freedom over every aspect of the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through ClickUp, and then in the top right-hand corner, I'm going to click Automations. And then I'm going to click Add an Automation. And then what I want as a trigger is when a custom field changes right here, and the field that I'm looking at specifically is called stage. And when it changes to interview 1, what I want to do is, as a trigger, I want to go down and then I want to call a webhook, and then I need to get my webhook URL. So I'll say hiring sales hiring stage equals interview 1. That'll be the name of my webhook. Then I'll copy this address to my clipboard, paste this here. Now, every time the stage changes to interview 1, I'm going to be sending a request. And so I want to test this first. So I'm just click run, and then I'm going to change this Nix arrive. Let's just change this name before it kills. Actually, no, I'm not going to change this name. Okay, let's just delete this Nix arrive first so we don't have like a million ones in interview 1. And then why don't we change this to interview 1, see what happens. So I just changed it to interview 1. You'll see that ClickUp is really fast with this, so I've already received the webhook. And let's take a look at this payload. It's huge. There's the ID, there's the name of the record, the status. If I go down to custom fields, you'll see every field that I have is also listed here. You will notice, though, that it's a little annoying insofar that this stuff is, like, if I wanted to access a specific field, I couldn't do it simply. I'd have to like go into an array indexing thing, and then I'd have to like try and map the custom field with the ID equals to this. So what I usually like to do in setups like this is I like to get the ID from the webhook, and then I like to go back and then call ClickUp again. And this is just another simple two-step design pattern where you'll just essentially just always have easily accessible and easily maintainable info. So I'm just going to test this again by moving the first record back to reviewed, and then I'll move it back to interview 1. Sometimes ClickUp doesn't get this instantly because it's a little bit laggy, but it looks like it did in this case. And you'll see how we received the ID, and then in the second module, we fed the ID into the ClickUp get a task module. And now if you go down to custom fields, you have basically a very easily accessible named list with stage, first name, first. Okay, it looks like I have 2 fields called first, which is sort of weird, but just ignore that. Candidate email, candidate phone, sold high ticket, all that stuff. So that's that. Now, what are we going to do with this? Well, what we want is when the state changes, we want to get all the contact information here, and then we want to send out an email. And we want the email to include a link to the calendar. So let's just do send an email. Email we're going to send it from is just info@. It's always good to get in the habit of doing. The email address we are going to send from or to is going to be the candidate email here. And then it's going to be congratulations. We'd like to have you for an interview. And let's do congratulations first name. Really give them that nice automated sexy experience. And little stuff like this will really impress a lot of hires because most companies have just the most atrocious hiring practices ever. Our team loved your video and the rest of your application. We'd love to extend an invitation to learn a little more about you over a call. If this is still something you're interested in, please book a meeting with our manager. Let's just say Nick, using this link. I'm just going to grab like a random cal.com link here. And then since this is HTML, I can use tags. One tag that I'm going to use is the A tag, which is a link tag. And you paste in a link here, and then whatever you do after this closing tag is like the text that will be highlighted with the link. So let's do that. Okay, that's that. That looks pretty good to me. We don't need any attachments or anything like that. We're not going to save the message after sending. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to test this puppy. So let me save this. I'm going to click run. And then what I'm going to do is pretend that I loved Nick's application so much that I am now extending him an interview request. So I just moved into interview 1. We got the webhook, we got the ClickUp information, and then it says here we sent the email, which is nice. I'm going to go and log on to my email, which is somewhere here, and just see if I got it. Yes, looks like it. Congratulations, Nick. We'd like to have you for an interview. Nick, our team loved your video and the rest of your application. We'd love to extend an invitation to learn a little bit more about you over a call. If this is still something you're interested in, please book a meeting with our manager, Nick, using this link. Here's a link. We look forward to meeting you. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks. Best wishes. The 1 second copy team. Quite nice, quite sexy. And now we have at least some automated way of contacting a client simply by changing, a stage from one to another. Now, one thing that I like to do here, and one thing that this is like the nerdiest and like the best practices that I'll ever do. I like to add an update to a task every time I send an email to somebody. I think it's called a task comment here. Yeah. So the reason why is I just want the hiring manager to see that there was some history of communication between our company and the prospect, so that again, if there's ever like any accountability issues or we need to like look back in time and see what's going on, we'll just see like an update having been added to that record. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab the task ID. Now, a good design pattern to get in the habit of doing is always use the same trigger for our same module if you're using IDs or mapping anything like that. Just tends to help. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste in the body of the message, the same thing that I pasted in here. So sort of annoying, but I basically have to just copy and paste this again. And you can get around copying and pasting the exact same message by, we could have like another module here and we could call it email. We'll just say, then we'll just call this email HTML, and then maybe I could just paste all this stuff in here. This around, basically, if you ever find yourself reusing the same variable over and over and over again, it's better just to pull from a module. That's what I'm going to do here. And then the task comment I'm going to post is just going to be the same HTML, and that way, if I ever want to change the next two modules, all I do is I change this. So I'm going to save that, and then we'll test this one final time for sanity. So I'll move this back to reviewed. Now this is here, and then I'll go to interview one. This is waiting, just received it. Okay, great, we got the task. Okay, great, we set the email body here. Okay, great. Looks like we sent an email, awesome, and then we posted a task comment, awesome. If we go over here now and we click on the body of this, you'll see that it's pasted in the email. ClickUp and Gmail both have slightly different email formatting rules, so this HTML is actually being displayed directly in the message. Obviously, we could fix that if we wanted. We could just replace all BRs with new lines or something like that. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Basically, this is like now the single source of truth saying we sent them this exact email. And anybody that looks at this later will know that they've received that request. Now we can add a couple of other automations here. We could, for instance, have something that scans through all open tasks once a day, and it could check to see how long they've been in interview one for. So you could have like another stage here called like date moved to stage. And then you could use a ClickUp automation that looks to see what was the date that they were initially moved to interview one. Let's say it's February the 24th. And then what you calculate the distance between February the 24th and the current day. And you could say, okay, this person's been in this stage for 8 days now, but they're still in interview one. They haven't really moved forward with the process. What you could do is every day, scan through all of your open applicants here automatically. Maybe you're using 10 ops a day or something, totally worth it. And then if that value is greater than 10, send a follow-up email being like, hey, just double checking to see if you're still interested in this. If not, we're going to rescind our invitation. You can do something like that extremely easily. But I'm not going to get into that because I think that's sort of just like same level stuff that you guys probably already understand instinctively. Okay, great, so that's interview one. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to copy this exact same flow. So just copy all those modules. Do this for ClickUp stage interviewing 3. And the really cool part about make.com is you can just copy all the modules, open up a new one, and then paste them in. And so I think send email inviting to interview stage. I think I wrote my title as something like this. What you will have to do is you'll have to create a new webhook. So we'll do interview 2 here. Then I'm going to go back here and then create that same automation just by duplicating it in the current location. And then instead of stage or interview 1, we'll do interview 2. And then the address that we're going to use for this is here. This is about how fast I'd develop it in real life if I were, not just showing you all. So we'll give that a try. The hook already has a scenario assigned. Oh, I must be using the same webhook. Why don't we say, it might be one of these other webhooks actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Let me just make sure that we can run this. I'm going to go back to interview 1, chug this out of interview 2, see what happens. Awesome, we received the payload, that looks good. Now what we're going to do is get the payload ID again, set the email HTML. Let me just make sure that everything's good here. Yeah, it should be fine. Hi blank, thanks so much for the great interview. Our team, it was great getting to know you. Let's do, we'd like to invite you in for our final interview. Assuming after this, assuming you're accepted, you'll receive a job offer and be invited to work directly with us. Please book using this link. Maybe now we're meeting with the CEO, so we'll say Peter's calendar. We look forward After learning more about you, let us know if you have any questions. Thanks. Awesome. That looks good. And then because we use the same email HTML here, we should be good to go. So I'm going to rock this back to interview 1. You'll see nothing has changed here because this is only monitoring interview 2. Now we're going to go and pull the interview 2 HTML, and we should have now both like an updated log of all the comms. Oops, wrong one. Of both of these. Yep. And we also, if I check my email now, we'll have both emails sent. So again, the first one that we sent was this up here, and the second one that we sent is this down here. You can see how you can build out, arbitrarily complex and automated flows using a method like this, which is cool. Of course, you can do the same thing with the hiring package. You could set a webhook here. When somebody's hired, you could automatically send them over all of the stuff that they need in order to be hired. So maybe you could send over like a job offer. Maybe you could send over an agreement automatically where they have to sign and send back to you. You could do all sorts of things. But from a bird's eye view, this is more or less what it looks like. One final thing that I'm just going to touch on, and I'm not going to build, is a lot of people that watch one of my previous videos are probably wondering, can you update the stage or status of the client or of the candidate using like a cal.com booking trigger? Or can you like get a webhook when somebody books using that calendar link and use that to update or add a comment or something? You totally can. Cal.com and Calendly and all these services offer webhooks that allow you to add another module, to add another scenario, and then use that scenario to automatically update this to maybe it's like interview 1 meeting request sent, interview 1 meeting booked or something, right? They're slightly different semantically, but yeah, you can make it essentially as complex as you want. I'll be honest though, usually this is worth at least like a few minutes of somebody's day, and so I don't always want to automate the hell out of everything too much because sometimes it doesn't really have functional utility. If you consider the bottom line impact that a good hire can have on your company versus a bad hire, it's usually in the realm of like $50,000 to $100,000 a year. And so to me, when I think about ROI, $50,000 to $100,000 a year is worth having somebody spend at least a few minutes just doing some of this stuff manually, just in case there are any errors with the automation or anything like that. So always keep that in mind. That is it for our video on setting up a hiring pipeline. Again, this is the exact same sort of hiring pipeline that I use at my 7-figure agency, and a ton of the companies that I work with now use at theirs. This is how you can process between 50 to 100 applicants per day. And automate all the mundane, routine, boring shit like sending out emails, updating requests, logging information, and that sort of thing. Hope you guys liked the video. If you guys have any comments you'd like to leave, feel free to do so down below. Everyone helps. Like, subscribe, and let me know what else you'd like to see in the rest of the course, because we're actually starting to come up to the end of it. We still have like 3 or 4 left, I think, but we're actually working our way through, which has been quite surprising. Anywho, thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.